The suspect, identified as Danielle Johnson, was also a controversial astrology influencer who was worried about this week's solar eclipse. Police sources telling the LA Times that those concerns over the eclipse may have been a contributing factor in the crimes. Now, Johnson went by the online name of Danielle Ayoka and had recently referred to the solar event as a spiritual warfare, posting online that the eclipse was here. And then just a few days later, the tragic chain of events started to unfold. Her partner was stabbed to death. Her baby died after being thrown from a car. Another child has been injured, and Johnson herself died in a car crash. Now, investigators found tarot cards and black feathers at the crash scene, and they believe that the eclipse may have been a factor in these killings.
She was warning people. She was saying, pick a side. The way that she typed about it was in all caps. And you could tell by her actions that it wasn't just a ploy to get attention or, drive up her followers or whatever, the streams or whatever she was looking for. It looked like she was very disturbed.
I heard screaming.
Could you make out if it was a man or a woman?
I heard a little girl screaming.
It was a little girl screaming.
And a mom, I think. Walked out our front door, and to the left is their door, and their door was wide open, and there was blood all throughout their front door, all the way to the hallway leading to the elevator, and blood on the walls. So then I called my dad.
I went into the apartment. I stepped over blood puddles and checked on the body and saw that he was dead. He was face down, and I called 911, of course.
Any indication ever that something was going on there that could possibly even close to end in a bad way?
Our neighbors have heard fighting, and I've heard fighting, but I could never imagine this. You don't think your neighbor's going to get murdered, no.
Well, a lot is going on up there, and, at one point I was thinking of calling Child Protective Services, but...
Why?
Because I had I don't know. I just did.
Then the baby didn't make it? Because I saw, oh my God, I'm going to be sick.
So today we're here with our favorite go-to astrologer, Danielle Ayoka, better known as @MysticLipstick on Twitter. Danielle, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to see you. Besides you, running up our lives, basically just reading us for Phil.
Every day.
Hello. Every day.
Love on.
I know Sylvia loves a good dictionary definition, okay? It could be helpful to just ground our listeners. How would you define astrology?
I would say astrology is basically the interpretation of the energies of the planets at the time that you were born or in the current moment. So obviously nobody's the literal fucking Pluto is defining this right now. It's the energy that Pluto represents. It's the energy that Pluto invokes in us. So the easiest way that I like to describe it is that with the moon, the moon controls the tide. The moon controls people's emotions. When there's a full moon, there's higher crime rates, there's more births. Eclipses, there's more births, there's more deaths. So, we are made of over 70% water. And so with that, the energies of the planets that they represent pull on our energies to form us a certain way, almost like a cookie cutter shape. And that's how you get your birth chart. And then that's also how the collective energy is formed every day with the transits, so where all the planets are the sign and then whatever degree they're in, et cetera. So it's basically that. I feel there is definitely a physiological effect of the planets, just like we have benefits from the sun, and there's things that happen to us from the sun and from the moon. The other planets play into that as well that are in our orbit.
Danielle Johnson, also known as Danielle Ayoka, better known as Mystic X Lipstick, was a 34-year-old astrologer, self-proclaimed Reiki master teacher, Etsy seller, and R&B singer.
I can't say I'm sorry, 'cause you deserve the shit I put you through, yeah.
She had a significant social media following on Twitter, boasting over 100,000 followers. She had garnered such popularity that Essence magazine recognized her as one of the top black astrologers to follow, praising Danielle for keeping it all the way real about the signs in accurate and informative threads. Residing in California, she lived with her 29-year-old boyfriend, Jalen Chaney, her 9-year-old daughter from a previous relationship, and their 8-month-old daughter. Cheney and Johnson's relationship blossomed when Jalen was stationed in Italy as an airman. He embraced fatherhood with enthusiasm, enjoying travel, video games, and harboring aspirations of becoming a meteorologist. But tragically, those dreams were shattered. In a horrifying turn of events, Danielle murdered her 8-month-old daughter, attempted to kill her 9-year-old daughter, and ultimately killed Jalen, driven by her delusional belief that the world was about to end during a solar eclipse. This appalling tragedy captured widespread attention due to its gruesome nature, the loss of innocent lives, and the glaring display of mental health issues exhibited by Ioka. Welcome to the American Crime Femicide channel. Please like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification button for future uploads. Both Ioka and Jalen led seemingly quiet lives, rarely sharing photos of themselves or their children with the public. However, Ioka's Twitter account was open to the public, and she frequently aired her thoughts there. A deep dive into her profile revealed a troubled individual, fixated on the solar eclipse and astrology. Despite her roles as a mother and girlfriend, she spent much of her time indulging in astrological readings. However, most of her posts appeared to be conspiracy theories. Their neighbors described them as reserved and aloof, though occasional arguments could be heard emanating from their apartment. Yet, the true extent of their situation remained unknown until April 8. Investigators disclosed that Cheney and Johnson were heard arguing around 3:40 a.m. on Monday, and the altercation escalated tragically when Danielle fatally stabbed Jalen. Cheney's lifeless body was discovered inside the family's apartment by a neighbor who noticed blood seeping out from under the door. LAPD officials confirmed that the bloodied knife used by Johnson in the attack was found at the scene. Subsequently, Johnson fled the apartment with her children. Witnesses spotted her car on the 405 freeway, where she callously pushed out the infant and 9-year-old. Tragically, the 8-month-old was struck by a passing vehicle and lost her life, while the 9-year-old sustained injuries that, fortunately, were not fatal. Johnson continued her reckless flight, reaching speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour as she careened into Redondo Beach, crashing her car head-on into a tree and ending her own life in the process.
3 deadly crime scenes in 3 cities more than 30 miles apart. And tonight, police say they are all connected, part of one big investigation. Good evening, everyone. I'm Colleen Williams. This all started overnight when the body of an infant girl was found on the 405 freeway. Also discovered a young girl who is now being treated for moderate injuries. And tonight, the NBC4i team has confirmed both children are connected to a deadly crash in Redondo Beach and a murder in Woodland Hills. NBC4's Darsha Phillips live right now in Woodland Hills with more on the investigation. Darsha.
Colleen, the deadly chain of events is believed to have started here at the Montecito Apartments in Woodland Hills with the murder of a man in his 30s. But it was the last piece of the gruesome puzzle that police put together, and that's because the body of that man lay undiscovered possibly for hours until neighbors woke up and saw blood pooling out of the apartment. 2 children found on the 405 around 4:30 Monday morning, an infant who died on the side of the freeway and a 9-year-old girl with minor injuries. Then around 5 a.m., a driver in a black Porsche believed to be related to the children slammed into a tree on PCH in Redondo Beach and was killed. As police begin to thread the connections, another discovery linked to these 2 scenes, this time at the Montecito Apartments in Woodland Hills, where it appears these gruesome events were set into motion.
I woke up in the middle of the night at around like 3:40 a.m. to screaming and a commotion.
This woman, who did not want her name to be used, says her neighbors had been fighting last night. The man and woman lived next to her with their 9-year-old daughter and new baby.
This morning I was getting up to go to work and I left and I walk out our front door and they're immediately to the left of us and I see their front door wide open and blood coming from their apartment all the way into the hallway to the elevator. I see blood on the walls.
She calls her dad to check on the people in the apartment, telling him she heard screaming last night.
I saw blood coming, there was blood in the apartment. like I said, the door was wide open, and I called 911 and said there's something going on here. I saw 2 legs sticking out, from the kitchen area.
Her father says he couldn't believe what he was seeing.
The EMTs told me over the phone to go in and check on the body, and I did. So I stepped over a bunch of blood and stuff and checked on the body, and he was deceased.
He says the man was face down.
I didn't see any weapons, no, but there was a lot of blood, and the apartment was in disarray, basically, so things were knocked over, a lot of trash everywhere. And
police tell NBC4's I-Team the children on the 405 and the driver who was killed in Redondo Beach are connected to this murder scene in Woodland Hills, but have not said how. Neighbors believe they are the family who lived here.
I just see the daughter that she used to play with my daughter at the pool during summer.
Neighbors say the family kept to themselves, but at night, especially in the past few months, fighting, screaming, and commotion could be heard coming from their unit.
It's like literally so tragic. I don't even know. I feel so bad for that little girl and that poor baby.
The 9-year-old girl, the only survivor, losing so much in the most unimaginable way.
The trauma that poor 9-year-old girl must have gone through is absolutely horrific.
I wish I knew what happened, how it got to that point.
LAPD confirms this was a murder-suicide. Police say after a verbal altercation, a woman stabbed her partner inside this Woodland Hills apartment complex. The victim's family tells us he was an Air Force mechanic and a loving father to their 2 children. Now, his homicide is connected to 2 other fatalities, all within the same family. A shocking scenario of twists and turns ultimately ends in tremendous tragedy. LAPD confirms 34-year-old Danielle Johnson stabbed and killed 29-year-old Jalen Allen Cheney in their shared Woodland Hills apartment when a heated argument turned violent early Monday morning. She then took off down the 405 with her 2 kids, pushing her 9-year-old daughter and infant from the moving car. The baby was killed and the little girl injured but survived. Johnson continued driving, her car going over 100 miles per hour before she crashed into a tree on PCH in Redondo Beach.
I looked at my phone and I saw that there was 2 kids found on the side of the 405 freeway and their ages, and I screamed. And I called my husband and my daughter up and I read them the article. And we all knew at that point it was our neighbors. It was obvious.
The couple's next-door neighbors woke up to a trail of blood leading from the apartment to the elevator and immediately called for help.
Their front door was wide open. It was like propped open. And I saw pretty much it was in disarray in there. I mean, the knocked over furniture and blood.
I told them it was a 3-story. The bedrooms were downstairs, and stood there as they said, "I see a body down." And they pulled their guns and said, "If anyone's in there, come out with your hands up."
Richard and Jody Berglund didn't know the couple personally. According to family, Jalen was in the Air Force, served 4 years in Italy, where he likely met Danielle. He was an aspiring meteorologist. His brother tells KTLA he didn't know the details of the couple's relationship. As for his daughter, she's being treated for her injuries at UCLA. She's the sole survivor and likely the primary witness to a series of unimaginable events.
Knowing that poor child saw what she had to see and experienced what she had to experience on the side of the freeway, and, losing her mother the way she's now lost her mother, and probably the last memory she have of her mother is not going to be great. And I just can't. That is going to haunt me forever.
New details tonight about that double murder-suicide involving a family, including a little 8-month-old child. The LA Times is reporting now that the suspect, identified as Danielle Johnson, was also a controversial astrology influencer who was worried about this week's solar eclipse. Police sources telling the LA Times that those concerns over the eclipse may have been a contributing factor in the crimes. Now, Johnson went by the online name of Danielle Ayoka and had recently referred to the solar event as a spiritual warfare, posting online that the eclipse was here. And then just a few days later, the tragic chain of events started to unfold. Her partner was stabbed to death. Her baby died after being thrown from a car. Another child has been injured, and Johnson herself died in a car crash. Now, investigators found tarot cards and black feathers at the crash scene, and they believe that the eclipse may have been a factor in these killings, though the motive is still unclear.
In the aftermath of this heart-wrenching tragedy, Ioka's family has remained conspicuously silent, failing to step forward to offer their voices or advocate on her behalf. It's a bitter reality that CPS now finds themselves tasked with locating the surviving child's next of kin. Meanwhile, Jalen's family, in a bittersweet interview, admitted to being largely unaware of his relationship with Ioka. Their last conversation with him gave no indication of the horror that was about to unfold. In this moment, authorities cling to hope that the 9-year-old survivor may shed light on the events leading up to the tragedy. Astoundingly, astrologers have emerged to issue warnings about the dangers of spiritual psychosis, emphasizing the dire consequences of losing touch with rational thought. Regardless of the eventual outcome, the impact of this devastation will linger indefinitely, leaving a family fractured and adrift. As their daughter and loved ones grapple with the enormity of this loss, let us hold them close in our thoughts and prayers. May the souls of the victims rest in peace,